Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Well, I did mean to get back on schedule. I'm sorry, I'll catch up, don't worry. Anyway, we've got some new depressing stats, mostly confirming what we already know, but also a bit of really good news. Let's get to it. Shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Peter Park and Shay Meehan, as well as all our other patrons. You are absolutely vital. Let's get caught up on some polls. Sounds like intro-outro music is a negative. That's my preference as well, so cool. Everyone who responded feels good about the new dual link format for links, so we'll keep that. I think it's probably time to decide on the bonus content. It looks like the most popular are blooper reels and feedback on structuring the podcast, while there's less interest in blog posts and personal stuff, with a fair amount just asking to spend as much time on the podcast as possible and cut the fluff. Obviously, we're already doing the polls on how to improve the podcast, and that will continue because it's low time investment and I value your feedback and want to make this as good a service as possible. What I'm thinking for the rest is that we try out the bloopers and just do blog posts on rare occasion if I have time and something that I think is worth sharing. Otherwise, I'll focus on making sure you all get the information you're looking for. Of course, I do not want anyone feeling left out, so if you were really interested in personal stuff or blog posts, then shoot me a message or an email and let me know, and I will definitely reconsider. As for the bloopers, I'm thinking it's probably better to combine it into one quality reel per week rather than per episode. Because, while I make a lot of mistakes, not every episode has funny mistakes, and it would definitely be more time efficient this way. Anyway, new poll on Patreon to give your thoughts on that specifically. On to the news. To catch you up on the UBI march from Saturday, we had events from all over the world, and none more than here in the US. Scott gave a speech, LA's rally made it to the cable news, New York City and LA had eviction demonstrations for all the soon-to-be homeless, Germany had a huge bike parade, marchers in New Orleans were undaunted by pouring rain. It was quite the show. There's far too much to talk about now, but I put together a Twitter thread of all the events that I saw, which you can check out below. Let's fight to make next year's march a national holiday of celebration for a new age of freedom. On to darker news, I thought I should take a moment to summarize the developing fight to replace RBG on the court. It's unclear what impact the battle will have on the passage of a stimulus bill or on the presidential or congressional races. While nominations of justices often take longer than the 40-odd days remaining before the election, it is possible that McConnell could ram it through in haste. Pelosi has already threatened a challenge with another impeachment hearing in order to stop it. One thing getting overlooked in these dark days is just how far this battle shows that we've fallen in terms of respect for the law. The Supreme Court and all courts have always intended to be nonpartisan, examining only the law itself. The role of the courts is not to legislate on party lines, but to interpret the law faithful to the intent of its authors. If this were the intent of our legislators, there would be no fight to rush a nomination. It would not matter which party selected the next justice. This is exactly why, during Obama's term, Republicans like McConnell and Lindsey Graham made workaround arguments on technical and moral grounds, skirting the issue of partisanship. That Republican senators are directly contradicting their own words now and rushing the process in order to confirm an appointee proves that those principles have been abandoned. The court is being blatantly politicized. This is something that partisan hacks like Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, a hardline Republican who himself is on Trump's shortlist for the Supreme Court, demonstrate beyond question. Hawley tweeted on Saturday, quote, "2 months ago, I pledged to vote only for SCOTUS nominees who understand and acknowledge that Roe was wrongly decided. I stand by that commitment, and I call on my fellow Republican senators to take the same stand." End quote. This is a direct admission that he will only vote for a justice who will do what he wants, which is to legislate from the bench on the issue of abortion, which also conflicts with freedom of religion, as the belief that fetuses are people is inherently tied to a belief in a soul, a religious belief. Freedom of religion, as our ancestors well knew when they came to America, relies on the absence of a state religion. which requires that government favor no religion above others. Attempts to ban abortion completely have always flown in the face of freedom of religion, as it is a theocratic policy. That said, it's not certain that McConnell will get the votes he needs. It would take 4 Republican senators voting against nomination to stop it. There are a few who might. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska supports abortion rights and is considered a centrist. On Sunday, she announced she would oppose moving forward with Trump's next nominee, saying, quote, "For weeks I have stated I would not support taking up a potential Supreme Court vacancy this close to the election. Sadly, what was then a hypothetical is now a reality, but my position has not changed." End quote. Susan Collins also supports abortion rights and previously voted to allow witnesses at the impeachment hearing, though she did not vote to convict. In a statement on Saturday, Collins said the winner of the November 3rd presidential election should choose Ginsburg's replacement, adding that she would have no objection to the Senate Judiciary Committee beginning a review of credentials of Trump's eventual nominee, but that, quote, "Given the proximity of the presidential election, I do not believe that the Senate should vote on the nominee prior to the election," end quote. Then there's Mitt Romney, who might be the most principled senator of the lot so far, standing by his values rather than worshiping at the altar of Trumpism with his brethren, even going so far as to be the only Republican to vote to convict Trump in the impeachment hearings. This makes Romney perhaps the only Republican in the Senate loyal to the people and the Constitution rather than his party. However, when a rumor of Romney declaring he would not vote in favor of a nomination before the election surfaced, his press secretary shot it down as false, leaving his position unclear. We'll keep an eye on it. It's gonna get ugly. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's 2020 International Survey of Adult Financial Literacy, 42% of the 125,000 adults polled reported worrying about meeting everyday expenses. 40% were concerned about their financial situation, and 37% reported that they were just getting by. Furthermore, in response to the question, if you lost your main source of income, how long could you continue to cover your living expenses without borrowing any money or moving house? 28% said about a week. 25% said about a month. 15% said about 3 months, and 18% said more than 6 months. The remainder, just over 14%, reported not knowing, which the study's author suggests is revealing of either unpreparedness to consider such an eventuality or lack of resources for a financial cushion. The OECD survey did not include the US, but a recent NPR report indicates that many Americans are in the same boat. At least half of all households in the 4 largest US cities, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and Houston, reported facing serious financial problems, including depleted savings, trouble paying bills, and affording health care. When over half the population of the world's wealthiest countries would fall into poverty in 1 month without employment, we need to stop calling the countries wealthy and call them countries with the wealthiest individuals. The vast majority of the world's population is either in poverty or close to it. This is insane. Furthermore, a new study from Boston University School of Public Health finds that whereas before the pandemic, 8.5% of U.S. adults reported being depressed, that number has now risen to 28%. And that's almost certainly an understatement, as depression goes underreported for multiple reasons. It's likely that at least a third of Americans are now depressed following our handling of the pandemic, the state of our political culture and economy, and everything else. It could not be more clear that the leadership and systems we've got are killing us, and that we need drastic change to reverse the disastrous course we're on, which is already the worst conditions in modern American history. On that note, Sudbury's Board of Health has unanimously endorsed a letter asking the federal government to transition the CERB into a permanent guaranteed basic income for all. They definitively state, quote, "It's a huge cost to society to not address poverty. Dealing with poverty through things like a basic income is a clear return on investment by reducing all of our taxpayer dollars that go into resource-intensive supports and emergency support systems that end up treating the consequences of poverty. A guaranteed basic income can improve economic security to support all citizens to achieve optimal health and equity. Income alone is the single strongest predictor of health. We've seen it locally, provincially, nationally, and globally. Health improves up every step of the income ladder. End quote. Can't be much more clear than that. I also appreciate them noting that it is more expensive to maintain poverty than to eliminate it. Which is why I'm happy to report some great news today. Biden has added a new policy to his platform that is very much a step in the direction of UBI. He's adopted, no doubt with help from Kamala Harris, an expansion of the child tax credit to remove the conditionality which is currently preventing the poor from accessing it, and to increase the amount of the benefit from $2,000 per year to $3,600 for children ages 0 to 5 and $3,000 for ages 6 to 17. This is also an expansion of the age range, as 17-year-olds are currently excluded, and the credit would be split monthly to function as regular income rather than a lump sum at tax time. This would convert the credit into something very similar to child benefits in Canada and almost every European country, who all have lower levels of child poverty than we do. It would last through the duration of the pandemic. Obviously, we would like to see it become permanent, but this is the biggest piece of evidence so far, along with all the other progressive policy that Biden and the party have recently adopted, suggesting Biden is evolving on the issue and could potentially be moved to mainstream UBI, just as Yang hopes. The temporary nature of it may also be strategic. Because the measure is for less than 10 years, it could be passed through the budget reconciliation process, meaning that it can bypass attempts by Republicans to filibuster it, making it almost certain to happen if Biden wins. And it could very well go the route of Obama's stimulus bill changes to the child tax credit and similar earned income tax credit, which were continually extended until they were made permanent. A team of researchers at Columbia University's Center on Poverty and Social Policy find that Biden's plan would cut child poverty by at least a third and deep poverty by almost half. It would also benefit those without kids, as research has found that exactly such a child credit reduces crime and drug and alcohol use while raising health and education outcomes and earnings by almost 20%. Lower crime is an obvious benefit. Better education and earnings is harder to quantify, but definitely translates to better citizens, which means a better society for all of us. Overall, this is cause for celebration and encouragement that a Biden administration could be a vehicle for UBI, as Yang says. Finally, the Income March and Humanity Forward phone banking event for David Kim and Donna Imam, two of our candidates with the best chance of winning their races and advancing Yang's policy in Congress, are going on right now. Click the link below and pitch in, even if only for half an hour. This is how change happens, gang. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Check out the Income March thread, share and bookmark the Economic Precarity article, Depression article, Sudbury endorsement, and Biden's child credit policy thread. Join in the phone banking for Imam and Kim. Help recruit other organizations to the cause and get everyone to sign the UBI petition. Flood Congress and Trump with calls, tweets, and letters using the Resist Bot or Income Movement easy contacts below. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, United Way, or the H3 podcast thread. And don't forget to Yang Daily.